Hello everyone, I'm Dimple Tyagi is here. Today I'm going to summarize you the story The Stonecutter. The Stonecutter is a very interesting story. So let's start the story. Once upon a time there lived a stonecutter. Every day he went to a great rock in the side of a big mountain and cut out slabs for gravestones or for houses. He understood very well the kind of stones needed for different purposes, and as he was a careful workman, he had plenty of customers. For a long time, he was happy and contented and asked for nothing better than what he had. Now the mountain dwelt a spirit which appeared to man every now and then and helped them in many ways to become rich and prosperous. The stonecutter, however, had never seen the spirit and only shook his head with an unbelieving air when anyone spoke of it. But a time would come when he would change his opinion. One day the stonecutter carried a gravestone to the house of a rich man and saw all sorts of beautiful things in the house, of which he had never dreamed. Suddenly, his daily work seemed to grow harder and heavier, and he said to himself, "Oh, if only I were a rich man and could sleep in a bed with silken curtains and golden tassels, how happy I should be." And a voice answered him, "Your wish is heard, a rich man you shall be." At the sound of the voice, the stonecutter looked around, but could see nobody. He thought it was all his fancy, and picked up his tools and went home, for he did not feel inclined to work any more that day. But when he reached the little house where he lived, he stood still with amazement, for in place of his wooden house stood a stately palace filled with splendid furniture, and most splendid of all was the bed, in every respect like the one he had envied. He was beside himself with joy, and his old life was soon forgotten. It was now the beginning of summer, and each day the sun blazed more fiercely. One morning, the heat was so great that the stonecutter could scarcely breathe and determined he would stay indoors till the sunset. He was rather full of dull, for he had never learned to amuse himself and was peeping through the closed blinds to see what was going on the street when a little carriage passed by, drawn by servant dressed in blue and silver. In the carriage sat a prince with a golden umbrella held over his head to protect him from the sun rays. "Oh, if I were only a prince," said the stonecutter to himself as the carriage vanished around the corner. "Oh, if I were only a prince and could go in such a carriage and have golden umbrella held over me, how happy I should be." And prince he was before his carriage rode one company of men and another behind it. Servants dressed in scarlet and gold bore him along. The coveted umbrella held over his head. He had everything his heart desired, yet it was not enough. He still looked around for something go wish for, and when he saw that in spite of the water he poured on the grass, the rays of the sun scorched it, and that in spite of the umbrella held over his head, each day his face grew browner and browner. He cried in anger, "The sun is mightier than I. Oh, if I were only the sun." and the son he was, and felt himself proud in his glory. He showed his beams above and below, on earth and in heaven. He burnt up the grass in the field and scorched the faces of the princes as well as of poorer folk. But in a short time he began to grow tired of his might, for there seemed nothing felt for him to do. Discontent once more filled his soul, and when a cloud covered his face and hid the earth from him, he cried in his anger, "Does the cloud hold captive my race? And is it mightier than I? Oh, I wish that I was a cloud, and mightier than any." And the mountain spirit answered, "Your wish is heard, a cloud you shall be." And a cloud he was, and lay between the sun and the earth. He caught the sunbeams and held them, and to his joy the earth grew well green again, and flowers blossomed. But that was not enough for him, and for days and weeks he poured forth rain till the river overwhelmed their banks, and the crop of rice stood in water. Towns and villages were destroyed by the power of the rain. Only the great rock on the mountain remained unmoved. The cloud was amazed at the sight and cried in wonder, "Is the rock then mightier than I? Oh, if I were only the rock!" And the mountain spirit answered, "Your wish is heard. You shall be a rock." And a rock he was, and gloried in his power. Proudly he stood, and neither the heat of the sun nor the force of the rain could move him. "This is better than all," he said to himself. But one day he heard a strange noise at his feet, and when he looked down to see what it could be, he saw a stonecutter driving tools into his surface. Even as he looked, if he could feel himself tremble, and soon a great block rock off and broke off and fell to the ground. Then he cried in wrath, "Is a mere child of earth mightier than a rock? Oh, if I were only a man!" And the mountain spirit answered, "Your wish is heard. A man once more you shall be." And a man he was once again, and by the sweat of his brow he toiled again at his trade of stone cutting. His bed was hard and his food scanty, but he had learned to be satisfied with it, and did not long to be something or somebody else. And as he never asked for things he did not have, or desired to be greater and mightier than other people, he was happy at last, and never again heard the voice of the mountain spirit. Thank you, student, and I hope that you will be able to understand the summary of the chapter.